All right, let's try this again. We've had some technical difficulties trying to get the uh, Childish Gambino, Bando Stone, and the New World album review uploaded, but we're trying it again because it's a good album. We want to review it. We want to let the people know our thoughts on the final installment in the Childish Gambino saga. So
Right.
let's give this one a go. Childish Gambino, second album of this year, final album as Childish Gambino, so we've been told. Bando Stone in the New World, supposedly also a soundtrack to accompany a movie by the same title, as far as I'm aware. It's been out for a little over a week now, and like I said, we reviewed it, but technical difficulties. So here we are again with another attempt at this review. Uh,
Right.
J-Mac, real quick for the people that didn't get to see the Childish Gambino At Vista review, let them know how you feel about the man, his career, and particularly the first album this year.
Yeah, because this is the second take, I'm gonna try to remember the things that I've said before. So we'll just we'll go with it. So with Gambino, I obviously like heard all of his big hits like 3005 and World Star and whatever else. Um, really enjoyed them. Great songs. But once I started getting into listening to full albums, listen to what's the internet one called? Behind the
Because the
Internet?
internet.
Because the Internet.
Yep.
That's the one. Um, it was interesting, not fully like my kind of music, but I was able to respect it and still get some enjoyment out of the fullness of it. So that's kind of what I've just expected from Gambino is I probably won't fully enjoy the stylistic music choices that he's made, but I can always find something. So with Ada Vista, I thoroughly enjoyed that album. I thought it was super cool. Production was on point. Um, and then here we are with this one. So
Yeah. I will reflect with my own take here because it is quite a bit different. He's always been an entertainer that I've loved a lot. I've heard most of his discography, if not all of it, for sure. All of the like studio stuff that you can get out on streaming, and always been a pretty big fan of his because the internet and Awaken My Love were some of my favorite albums when they came out. And so I did hear Ada Vista when it came out as like the date, whatever it was, 3/15/20 or whatever, whenever it dropped. And I didn't love it at all. It was very rough, very unpolished, and like not at all kind of his close to his best work. But then with the re-release of Ada Vista, he made some minor changes that I felt like made kind of all the difference. The production
mhm.
switch up and polishing and mixing and mastering really made a huge difference. And then the songs that he added, there's only 3 or 4 of them or whatever, but they were like my favorite songs uh, when they got added to the album. So I ended up enjoying that one quite a bit as well. Not as much as the last 2 albums that I mentioned, but coming into this one, I didn't really know how to feel with it being a soundtrack, how it was going to pan out, and also with it being his second album in like less than 6 months, how it was going to turn out. Granted,
Yeah.
a lot of Ada Vista was already done, but nonetheless, I kind of mentioned the production being a major part of Ada Vista, and I feel like it's always been a major draw of uh, his album rollouts and kind of the listening experience. With this one, I did feel like it was still a major focal point of the album. It was innovative. It blended a lot of new styles, even for him, a guy who's dabbled in a lot of styles and genres. I really liked the industrial rock jazz incorporation for like a true melting pot of a lot of different musical genres and styles. But while I do feel like it's an impressive palette of style blending, and it's impressive that he can do so much in so many genres, I don't feel like any of them really measure up to the best stuff in those subgenres. You know, when I'm listening to Hearts Were Meant to Fly, the industrial rap track as the opener, it does feel like a lesser well done version of like a Yeezus song or a JPEG Mafia track. Um, but it is cool, and I enjoyed it, but that's kind of an example of where I felt like it wasn't quite the best. I ended up giving the production an 8 out of 10 though.
Yeah, for me, I do agree. I think with Gambino, production is a huge thing that uh, rounds out his album, and if anything, brings it up higher when you're rating an album. This one, I was still impressed. I ended up giving it a 7. For me, it was just kind of all over the place. And granted, it's supposed to be a soundtrack for a movie, so that kind of changes things a little bit. So this is more like a soft 7. It just kind of depends on the actual soundtrack during the movie. Um, but it just felt like all over the place. I'm all for different genres and experimenting with new things and whatnot, but it was just a lot in what, like an hour and a half, an hour, what, however long the album is. So yeah, I ended up giving it a 7.
Yeah, and that's a fair rating for sure. I mean, it's right up there, kind of where I was going with it. I do agree it does feel a lot like a soundtrack style album because the music of it is a little all over the place. But another avenue that I feel like he always excels at is the vocal performances. He's one of the few artists that can do truly a little bit of anything and everything and do it pretty well. Um, I do think with this album, he proves that he's one of, if not the most versatile artists making hip hop right now, doing a variety of styles. Um, while that's the case, I don't feel like he showcases the vocal range that he does on his other projects in hitting
Yeah.
um, quite the same levels of notes, but he still does show the ability to do a crazy amount of styles in that time span, that runtime of the album. Um, and where the album does falter, I don't really feel like it's always his fault. I feel like a lot of the features
Right.
are the artists that don't really kill it vocally. I will say with these first two categories, which I gave vocals an 8 as well because I do feel like they're really well done. With these two categories, it is pretty blatant to me that he wears a lot of influences on his sleeve and isn't really trying to like necessarily take inspiration and put it in his own avenue. He just kind of does what others have done. Even like Yoshinoya, which has a lot of shots taken at Drake, sounds very much like a Drake track. And like I said, hearts were meant to fly. Um, sounds very Yeezus era Kanye, and then even like some of the alternative rock stuff sounds very similar to other artists that have done that kind of thing for a long time. Um, but yeah, like I said, overall I gave it an 8. I do feel like it is one of the stronger aspects on the album.
Yeah, and that's for vocals, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I ended up giving it the same. I gave it an 8. This is one of my mm, more enjoyable things when it comes to Gambino. I do feel like he has a unique voice, and it's very much distinguished. Like, okay, this is you turn something on, a Gambino's on. Like, there's no doubt about it. Um, and for me, I love that about an artist. I said that about the Don Tolliver album. I was saying the same kind of thing. Um, what I do like is, granted, you're right. The range on this album doesn't compare to some of the other albums he's done, or the singles, or whatever it may be. But there's still a good amount of range to where I did rate it as high as I did. And because I feel like this album is kind of all over the place, it kind of helps that aspect because then it's showcasing all of these different kinds of genres. What can you hit? What can you make of it? Kind of thing. So yeah, I ended up with an 8.
Respectable for sure. He certainly is really talented. An area that I was pretty harsh on with Atavista was the lyrical content of the album because um, for a lyrical rapper that has shown that he can be a great lyricist, he doesn't always put a lot of effort into the lyrics. It feels like, but I do think that this album improved on that category from the last project. It's some of his best recent lyrical moments, especially a track like Yoshinoya, where he's taken a lot of shots at the industry and Drake, or um, whether it's, I think it's on Survive that he takes a shot at Joe Budden. He's showing that he can be up there with the best lyricists when he wants to be. But I will say the greatest aspect of the lyrics on this album to me were his storytelling ability, his ability to express and convey moods and experiences, and paint pictures. He doesn't always show his best wordplay on the album. I pointed out a couple songs out of however many we got. Um, but overall, I do think he does convey that, story that he's telling really well,
Mhm.
which in this soundtrack kind of style album, I think really works in his favor. I ended up giving the lyrics a 7.
Yeah, so I agree once again. Gave it a 7. What I like and what I try to include when grading lyrics is, if there is a story to be told, how well can you tell the story? And is there like a good clear picture in my mind? Like how well were you able to do that? And I feel like, granted, he there, like you said, there are some great lyrical moments from him on this album, but I think the storytelling aspect is what caught my eye, especially like going through it for the second time and reading the lyrics. So like songs like Can You Feel Me, like even just being able to portray the emotion alone is really good. So yeah, I ended up giving it a 7 because I do think that there were better moments earlier in his career.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I agree with that, especially. It definitely isn't like his best lyrical work, but it is an improvement on Atavista. Getting into the concept of the album here, you have told our audience many times you're not a big concept guy. Not that you don't like concepts, but just that like it's not always the easiest part of the album for you to gravitate towards.
Yeah.
Um, just to kind of lay this one out there, I mean, like we've talked about how it's a soundtrack, it's going to fit the movie. From the trailer and the album listening experience, and kind of what I've grasped of what this album and movie is going to be like, it's kind of this end of the world concept in these situations throughout that. Portrayed in a pretty rough way, as this is just the soundtrack. Like I don't think he wants the audience to listen to this and get the entire story. Otherwise, there's no point in the movie. But it does kind of roughly take you through moments along that journey. Um, how has this concept sat with you over the past little bit since it came out?
So when we did originally record this episode, I was from the jump confused on what the heck it was. It kind of just sounded like they were traveling through like a jungle and like being all pissed off at each other with these little skits. Um, but since then, I've known that it's a soundtrack and it's kind of that end of the world kind of movie idea and whatnot.
Right.
So I ended up giving the concept a 6. This is one that can easily be changed, higher, lower, whatever it may be. It just kind of depends on the movie itself. Kind of like what I was saying earlier, like if it fits very well and very beautifully throughout the movie, and it's just only helping portray this this idea within the movie, then it could easily go higher. But if it's just kind of once again all over the place, or just there's a random song here or there, then it's like, okay, well, all right then. So
Right.
it's a cool sauce six.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention along with this end of the world scenario, I'm I've also so far understood that the like, to set it apart from just the standard post-apocalyptic or apocalypse movie, um, in a lot of these skits, the reason that they are those things like, they're arguing or they're like, he's complaining that there's no bidet and things like that. Um, I, my understanding so far is that the movie is about a singer during the apocalypse and kind of how that, like, it's that story of that guy like going from this posh lifestyle to surviving essentially. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm very similar to you. It's very flexible at this point because it is like a soundtrack for a movie that we don't really have a great taste of yet. So I gave it a 7. If the movie and the soundtrack don't really meld well together, I probably will go down to like a 6. But if this soundtrack really takes you through the movie and conveys all of those emotions and story points really, really well, it could go up to like an 8. But so far, it is a 7, just because there's a lot of stuff that is kind of left open ended. And if none of that stuff is really examined in the movie, it's not going to age very well for me.
Yeah.
Um, but let's move into the features. The features on this for me were very hit or miss, depending on the artist. I felt like Georgia Smith, Chloe, and Yeet all did really well, fit the tracks that they were on. Um, but I did feel like Amaray and Flo Milli's performances weren't, for me, they weren't adding very much to the album. The solo stuff that he does, when we're talking about the absence of a lot of features, tends to work really well without a lot of need for feature presence. It was cool to hear his son make an appearance on the album, kind of also adding to the emotional aspect of some of those songs and the concept that we're listening to in the album. I will say for the final Childish Gambino album, I do think it would have been cool to revisit some of the like greatest relationships and collaborations that he's had professionally in his career with someone like a Chance the Rapper or 21 Savage or Jhené Aiko. But the fact that they weren't on there doesn't really deteriorate from the album. Just, it feels like musical musical collaborations that never really got a final hurrah, if you want to call it that or whatever. Like, it just felt like there was
Yeah.
so much music on the table from those professional relationships that were maybe not going to get to hear anymore. But, I'll digress. Maybe we will. Maybe he'll show up on a feature somewhere. But yeah, I ended up giving the features a 6 just because they were kind of hit or miss for me.
Yeah. Once again, same boat. I gave the features a 6. Um, mainly because they're just not my kind of features. These are not my kind of vocalists. Um, it was hard at times to get through some of them. Like, I don't know how to pronounce this person's name. Fauché,
Yeah.
however you
Yeah,
pronounce
we'll
it.
go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I thought that was an absolutely horrendous feature. Sorry, not sorry. But I don't remember who the other one was that I wasn't super fond of. Um, all I know is that I didn't have a problem with the Yeet this time around. Yeet was perfectly fine. But granted, there were still some greatness from these some of these other features, like you were saying. My favorite ended up being his kid, Legend. I just thought they absolutely bodied that song together. Better than freaking Northwest and Adonis.
Yeah.
Trash.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's I do agree. I think it would have been great to hear something again from all of his, other artist buddies like 21 Chance, all of them. It just kind of sucks because it's a movie soundtrack, so it's like you still do have to go a certain direction for that company. So it would have been cool to maybe get one more project after this that's a final Gambino album, so it could just be fully his kind of thing, his decisions. Granted, I don't know all of the whole process of how they were doing this or making this album, whatever it may be. But I ended up giving it a six because I do wish that there were some better features. I didn't really have a problem with his solo stuff though. It was
Yeah,
mainly the actual features. So
for sure. Just on the subject of that Legend song, this was something that I brought up when we reviewed it the first time. I do really like the sentiment of the track, and I think they both give it great performances. It's for me, I cannot get behind that alphabet sample in the background.
oh yeah.
It I won't say it like makes it a terrible song, but it like I gave it one listen and I was like, that's more than enough. Like if I'm gonna go up a wall if I hear this ABC sample every day. Um, and kind of getting more
Oh
into things like that, talking about the replay value here. While Gambino's an artist that I feel like you've said like you appreciate his artistic vision and the direction he goes, I also feel like you've in that same breath said it's not always your cup of tea, your style of music per se. And so in talking about just like subjective entertainment and replay value, how has this aged over the first week, and how do you foresee this sticking around in your rotation going forward?
yeah, it's kind of still in that same boat. Like I respect the album. It's still once again as an album not for me. Granted, I still did find a couple solid songs that will probably stay in my rotation for a little bit. Um, like not like you. I love the Can You Feel Me, and I didn't even know about the whole ABC thing until like a couple days afterwards. That's hilarious. I also really like Real Love. I have how do you say this? Lithonia? Lithonia? Is that how you say it? I really like that one. So there's a couple songs that I do enjoy off the album. But the majority of it, whether it be the features that I'm not enjoying or just sporadic instruments and a lot's already going on in my mind, so then I have to like play ping pong with these very high energy beats and my thoughts, and it just doesn't mix well. So I ended up giving it a six. But it's cool. I still do respect it.
Yeah, I will echo that pretty close. I gave this a 7 out of 10 because there are some fun, respectable tracks. Something like a Lithonia or In the Night, Dadvocate is a song that I've been really enjoying lately. Or even I know you're not a big Yeet guy. Cruisin' is one for me that I think is a really fun track. Um, but I don't feel like it includes many, if any, of his best tracks in terms of throughout his whole career,
Yeah.
which is kind of sad because I feel like even when a lot of artists put out a trash album, there's something that I'm like, oh, this is actually, one of their better songs, despite it showing up on a pretty garbage project.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, overall, I gave it a 7 just because there are tracks that I'll come back to and a handful of them for sure, but it doesn't really feel like, the quality of the best tracks that I was getting off of because the internet or singles that he's dropped or Awaken My Love, you're not getting anything like a Redbone 3005, Sweatpants, The Worst Guys. Like, it's just not that kind of album. And, maybe because it's a soundtrack, it's not going to have as many things like that.
Yeah.
But overall, the whole album for me came out to just under a 7.5 out of 10. which, after a week does feel about where that's sitting with me. I don't know if it's going to end up on an end of the year list, or if it does, how high it'll get. I can pretty confidently say it's not going to be a top 3 album, because there's 3 albums that I've enjoyed a lot more than this one for sure.
Yeah, no,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, what did it end up as for you?
So it came out to a 6.6. In this last, what, 2 weeks? Did we record that episode 2 weeks ago? That's crazy. I
I think it
haven't
was just
listened to
last week. I
one.
think it was like 10 days ago.
Was it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
Who knows?
even then, I haven't listened to one song from the album since. Um, so it could probably sit at like a 6. Like I'd be okay, pretty confident with a 6 if I listen to it more than maybe back up to like a 6.5. But yeah, I can tell you right now, it won't be in my top 10.
There you
It's
go.
just
Not for you.
it just is what it is. Yeah, it's just not for me.
Yeah. Um, let's get into the best, worst, and most underrated track here. Walk me through your thought process on these.
So it, the only one I truly remember, actually there's two. There's two that I truly remember because I haven't listened to the album since. But it's Running Around, I remember very very vividly, and then Can You Feel Me? But what I put down for the best is Real Love. Um, I don't remember why. I want to say it was a mix of everything. Like I think I really enjoyed the production. The vocals were really good, and I liked the emotion that came from it. Um, all right, and now, hear me out. Hear me out. This is where we're standing. I'm gonna say that I don't have a worst song
No, no, no. You
anymore.
got to stand on business.
No, I will.
You,
No.
you can't
All right,
back out
so
now.
okay, so the worst song is Running Around. But not because it's a bad song. I just don't care for how repetitive it is. And then the feature was trash. So it's like I truly think that the production was super super cool, super fun. I thought the vocals from Gambino were great, but he repeats the same line. He has 4 lines in his first verse that he repeats twice, and then the feature comes on. She's trash, and then I don't even remember the ending. But so it's yeah, I stand on business.
All right, all right.
Um,
Most underrated. Let's move on.
Most underrated, I think, is "Can You Feel Me?" Like I said, I think Legend has is a great feature. Um, that was probably the song that I felt the most emotion from. I think they both absolutely killed it. Their blood, so it would make sense that their chemistry is pretty good. Father and son. Um, it- yeah, Legend was hands down the best feature off of this album.
Wow.
Everybody needs to show some respect to Legend.
Yeah,
Shout out
yeah.
to shout
He
out to
for sure
Legend.
he for sure killed it.
Yeah.
Super good. I will say this for my best song. It's honestly probably changed a little bit. The first time I heard, I'll say this first. It was pretty close between the two singles, Lithonia or In the Night for me. Um, I really, really like the smooth, mellow vibe of In the Night. I think the features sound great on it. Um, but and in hearing both of those as singles, I had a lot of respect for Lithonia, but didn't really love it at first. But it has grown on me quite a bit, so I might give the edge to that one at this point, just because it is such a crazy genre-bending, awesome vocal performance mashup of just like something I was not expecting from Childish Gambino to do this alt rock grunge thing so well.
Yeah.
Um, the worst is for me, and it's just because of the feature, because I do think the production was cool, and Gambino's initial performance was not too bad. But Talk My Stuff, the features were really bad in my opinion, and kind of made the track unlistenable. I don't, some people can do like this baby voice, high pitch thing kind of cool. They did not do that on that song. It was really bad, really annoying. Um, yeah. And, if I'm just picking out worst production moments, that blasted Can You Feel Me sample is so bad. But I'm not going to put that in that category to disrespect Gambino and his son like that, because they both killed it. And for sure, far and away, the most underrated track on this album is Running Around, because really for the reasons that you said it's good, like the production and the vocal performance, that was everything to me with this track. The numbers that it's doing, I just don't think are showing that vocal performance and that instrumental enough respect. I'll hear where you're coming from with the feature, definitely not for everybody. And the repetitiveness of the track definitely is repetitive. I'm not going to come in here and say that repeating the same 4 lines 6 times is not repetitive. But for me, I don't mind that on a track like this, just because that's not the area of those type of songs I'm going to be critical of, because when it is that grungy alt rock headbanger kind of sound, I don't really care if it's repetitive if it sounds really good, personally. So I hear where you're coming from, but you're unequivocally wrong. Maybe your worst take ever on this podcast.
No, there was one where I don't even remember what it was though.
Yeah, you've had some bad ones. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I will continue to have bad ones. I don't think I've had my worst yet. I think it's coming up.
It might.
I have a good feeling.
We'll see. We'll see where it ends up. Any thoughts that final things you want to get off before we wrap up this Childish Gambino review for the 4th time that we've tried to record it?
I just hope that he at least gives us a feature every once in a while. That's all I hope.
And if it is his last Childish Gambino album, it is one that I can, make my peace with. It's not like it's trash. But I do hope we at least get some music from him in the career in the future, just because he's so talented, whether it's as Childish Gambino or if he wants to retire that and just make music under his own name or in a group or whatever. He's such a multi-talented musical artist. It feels sad to completely, be done with his career, just because even at this later stage, he's proving that he still has so much talent and ability. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. We appreciate you all bearing with us and dealing with J-Mac's irrational hate of Running Around. And we'll bid adieu until next week, when we both probably will come with some more unreasonable music takes.
Yeah.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.